Salutations. I'd like to speak to you of the scientific academia and the analysis that I have come to and the conclusionary nature of thought concerning evolutionary claim. It is spoken that evolutionary teachings and such are the result of what? A mutation to provide some sort of beneficial change and such. Mutation does not add information. It is usually a destroyer of information of the double helix, or the proteins of the double helix, which is the encoding for the matrix of all life.
Why are you talking like the guy from the Monster Mash?
I was working in the lab late one night when my eyes beheld an eerie sight. For my monster from its slab began to rise, and suddenly, to my surprise, he did the monster. Oh. Oh. It's my favorite song.
With that said,
Sorry, with what said? I kind of got caught up doing my own thing there. Can you repeat it?
it is spoken that evolutionary teachings and such are the result of what? A mutation to provide some sort of beneficial change and such.
No, I don't think people become biology teachers because of a mutation that provides beneficial change and such. I think it's more just because they happen to become interested in biology, or in some places maybe they have too many math teachers and not enough science teachers. Or did you mean evolution and not evolutionary teachings and such?
Mutation does not add information.
That face just cracks me up every time, I'm sorry. Anyway, you can say it all you want, but that doesn't make it true. If you're considering DNA as information, then yes, mutations can add information, and they do. This isn't even something that's in question. I mean, this isn't like the fossil record where we have to observe the way things are now to understand a process that happened in the past. We can actually observe this process happening now, so what are you arguing about?
At best, it would cause a replication in certain genetic encoding. It would produce the same appendages in new locations at best, or it would resequence them in some way, shape, or form.
Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you know the meaning of the words you're using. Mutation can only cause a replication in certain genetic encoding, and that results in the resequencing of appendages in some way, shape, or form. It's the ramblings of an idiot.
It does not add new information.
The resequencing of appendages doesn't add new information? I think you're probably right. Your sentence describing it doesn't even contain any information.
So with that, how have we gone from the single-celled organisms of the simplest variety and caliber to multi-celled organisms in different phylums in plant life and animal life?
Not with that. That's how.
How has it occurred?
New genetic information.
New genetic information was added in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, that.
What added it?
Mutation. We covered this.
What brought it into a new paradigm of genetic reconstruction through the DNA sequencing?
Nothing, because that doesn't mean anything.
Introduction of new materials, perhaps?
Introduction of new materials? What, like you eat a rock and you turn into the thing?
Right.
No, wrong.
That's a theory.
No, it's not.
But eating something does not necessarily make it bonded to you and change your genetic structure. If that were the case, we'd all be what we ate.
I don't know why you felt the need to state that eating a banana does not turn you into a banana. Did someone actually tell you that they think that, or are you just making something up to argue against? If it's the latter, you can save yourself the effort, just go buy some Marvel comics and argue against those.
If someone ate vegetables completely, they would eventually evolve into a plant-like entity.
Yeah, dude, we get it. If you eat vegetables, you don't turn into a vegetable, and if you suntan in gamma rays, you don't turn into the Hulk. We know.
If they all ate animal-based food, such as beef, they would all become animals like a bull. It doesn't happen, people.
Okay, dude, if you're gonna take 30-second pauses between every sentence you say, you don't need to restate your point a dozen times. Especially when you're arguing against a concept too absurd for Cloudy with a chance of meatballs.
Otherwise we would have bull people, or we would have plant people, or we would have any of these things. So that is obviously a flawed thinking.
Oh, is it obvious? I hadn't noticed.
So what is adding the new information?
Mutation.
An unforeseen catalyst.
Sure, unforeseen in the 12th century. Although mutation isn't a catalyst, but it's as close as you're gonna get.
You know, I find it extremely hilarious that people talk about evolution as if it's factual still.
Yeah, everyone knows evolution was only factual until 1994. And by the way, bro, that smoking shit ain't good for you. It's gonna give you all kinds of mutations in your lungs.
They talk about evolution in general, that it is a mutation that's producing something new.
No, they don't say that evolution is a mutation. You know, if you're not even gonna pay attention and try and get things right, why don't you pause the video, go outside, have your smoke, chill out, come back with your nicotine fix, and do your video with proper focus. Because sitting there smoking, not concentrating, throwing out sloppy bullshit is just disrespectful.
We know mutation is a destroyer, generally speaking, from the very scientific academia that is producing this very same teachings about evolution.
Really? Sauce, please, because I think you're full of shit.
And I do love the ignorance of the scientific academia. I find it so laughable.
Ha 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 ha. You know, I never thought I'd find a guy who looks so much like he should be drinking PBR out of a bucket and sounds so much like an uneducated old money female version of Niles Crane trying to impress some hated acquaintances with their disdain for the new Met Tosca. What the hell happened, man? I mean, this is you on June 23rd, 2011.
Well, the wedding gown is spoken of in Revelations as well. It's a white gown, or a righteousness of the saints being in the gown itself. To be clothed with the words, washed clean with the words of the prophets and the saints and all the works that are lawful with Father's laws being the guiding rule and rod of measurement.
You sound pretty normal, comparatively speaking. You sound like a decent guy I could play video games with. I mean, yeah, you'd probably have insisted that we smoke a bunch of salvia and play one of those creepy Japanese dating sims, but still, it's better than how you became 2 days later on June 25th, 2011.
For in a church is an indoctrination of pure pressure to conform to the ways of thought and doctrines of those who teach. My advice instead would be to simply read your book and be obedient to your studies.
What happened to you, man? Did you get a bad Ouija board and get possessed by the spirit of Maud Lebowski?
My art has been commended as being strongly vaginal, which bothers some men. The word itself makes some men uncomfortable. Vagina.
Look, I mean, it's not really got anything to do with your video. I mean, your arguments stand or fail on their own merits, but god damn, you sound like a phony, pretentious dick.
They hold up forms of different creatures, similar in design, with similar appearances, such as primates, and then link them to men, or mankind. And then they link that, in turn, of the simian species and such, to that of apes, and such as that.
They link primates to humans, and then they link that to simians and such, and then they link that to apes and such as that. Did they forget to tell you how to use a dictionary in school? Even if you're arguing that evolution is untrue, these are just classifications that we use to organize things. And in this classification system, humans are apes are simians, and simians are primates. So no, they're not trying to link primates to simians and simians to apes, because apes are a subset of simians and simians are a subset of primates.
And they say that these are transitional forms. Generally speaking, I see that as the most sloppy form of work in scientific academia I think I've ever witnessed in my life.
And you really don't seem like a man who approves of sloppiness. By the way, I have a lot of trouble believing that you've ever witnessed any scientific work in your life.
You know, they're mapping out the genome of the human genetic code in a genome project, right? Trying to figure out what the sequencing actually is all about, how it relates to cellular development, how it relates to many things and such. And with this, they're able to do many genetic tests and such to determine predispositions for disease, to determine predispositions for a lot of different things.
Your video's kinda pink overall, so it's kinda hard to tell, but your eyes are looking pretty fucking red to me. That looks like just a cigar you're smoking, but I'm wondering what else might be in there. Whatever it is, I don't think weed on its own is enough to do this to someone.
And I wonder, why are they not instigating this very same technology with that of IDA, or these other simian species?
Oh, 'cause they didn't have technology. But what do you mean anyway, that you want them to instigate this technology with that of IDA? Do you mean you want us to tell our technology that IDA's technology made fun of its mother, starting a full-on robot war?
To encode their genetics, or to determine their encoding of the genetics, to compare it to mankind.
Oh, well, they don't do that because IDA is a 47 million year old fossil and it doesn't have any DNA in it? Why do the scientists need to build space rockets? Why don't they just flap their arms until they fly off into space?
Or with other phylums in general, to actually produce an actual working theory backed by factual claims, showing the transitional forms of each genome type, where the species crossed over, where the phylums crossed over, instead of just theorizing and putting things that are similar in design next to each other.
So your proposition is to take DNA from the fossils of various phylums in general, which don't have DNA for us to take, and map their genomes to see where they fit in between all the living species. That's stupid. But you do realize that we can determine common ancestry just by the genomes of extant species, right? You seem to believe that DNA evidence is good evidence, so do I. Throw out the fossil record, let's just keep the DNA evidence, and that's more than enough.
I find it disgusting, this academia that you would call scientific. It seems hearsay at best. I mean, you might as well place a golf ball, or ping pong ball, or baseball, and a softball all together and say, this one transitional formed into the other. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, golf balls and ping pong balls don't reproduce themselves. You could also take a golf ball and put it next to your car and say, this golf ball built this car. And yeah, it's obviously ridiculous. That doesn't mean that people can't build cars. Not everything that happens has to happen to golf balls and ping pong balls. Look, I know you said that your turtle died after you tried to use it as a bong, and you wish that your ping pong ball could take its place in every possible way, but unfortunately, ping pong balls can't do absolutely everything that living organisms can. It's just a sad fact of life. Now, if ping pong balls and golf balls could reproduce themselves, and we'd seen them reproduce themselves with errors before, causing, for example, yellow ping pong balls and pink ping pong balls, and fuzzy and giant and small and dimpled ping pong balls, and we found fossils of them in a smooth, predictable gradient from golf ball to slightly more ping pong ball to slightly more ping pong ball to fully ping pong ball, up through different layers of the ground that were laid down at different times in history. Yeah, we might start to think, hey, maybe these part golf ball, part ping pong balls are ancestors of one and descendants of the other. And if we had millions of types of self-reproducing balls and millions of fossil ball finds, and we started to predict where we should dig to find the different transitions between the different ball types, yeah, we could start to build a pretty good picture that we're right. But of course, balls don't reproduce, so it's pretty stupid to expect things to be like that.
And strangely enough, this is the type of teaching that I'm seeing even from Richard Dawkins.
I seriously doubt that.
Supposedly a noteworthy biologist, a claimer of evolution.
Well, no, I mean, even if you think he's wrong, he is a noteworthy biologist and a claimer of evolution. Supposedly nothing.
Recently I saw a disturbing video as he coverted with a female in his video, showing her a form of very primitive eyesight in a worm that exists today, and then he moved over to another animal with a more slightly complex design of the eye, and then yet another, and yet another, and yet another, and yet another, and yet another. Right, and he talked about the different levels of transition and such, how the simplest form evolved into a higher form. And yet, everyone misses the obvious answer. They all exist at the exact same time.
Alright, let me see if I can try and figure out what you're talking about. So he coverted with some woman in a video, so I guess they were both wearing Groucho glasses and using code names, and he showed her organisms that exist today with very primitive eye equivalents, and then more complex ones, all the way up to presumably eagles and stuff like that. Now, I don't know what video you're talking about, but I'm going to take a shot in the dark. Normally when someone like Dawkins, who's anti-creationist, tries to illustrate the gradient evolution of the eye, it's to combat the creationist nonsense that the eye is too complex to evolve. Usually, in and of itself, that's not used as evidence of evolution. It's just to illustrate, okay, here's a simple eye, here's a more complex eye, and here's a more complex eye. The point being that an eye does not need to be for all organisms the same as a human eye or an eagle eye, but it can be even as simple as just a light-absorbing patch. But even if it was supposed to be used as direct evidence for evolution, your objection that, oh, but they're all alive now, is absurd. Basically what you're saying is you won't accept comparative anatomy of things that are alive as evidence of common ancestry, and I'm guessing that would probably apply to DNA as well. And as you said before, you won't accept any fossils of extinct species as evidence of common ancestry. So you're basically trying to define evidence as impossible because you're saying anything dead cannot possibly be evidence and anything alive cannot possibly be evidence, no matter what. Therefore, evidence not only does not exist, but is logically impossible. I'm afraid it doesn't quite work like that.
All of them existing at the exact same time. Doesn't that blow the whole evolution theory out the window? Wouldn't this have evolved to the primary form already?
What does that mean?
And we made this redundant, and that would have died out completely.
So you're claiming that evolution claims that only one species can live on the planet at any given time. There's no room for an ecosystem, just one species, because if something evolves from something else, the something else has to die out. That's what you're trying to say evolution is? I don't even know what to say to that. That's too ridiculous even for me to handle.
Do you see the flaw in that thinking?
Yup.
Legitimate nature of transitions in forms and such is totally ludicrous.
The legitimate nature of transitions and forms and such is ludicrous. So you're saying that it's legitimate, but it's also ludicrous. So it's real, but it's just crazy.
And the fossil record does not even confirm the fact that evolution is factual. It in fact disproves it. According to your scientific academia, there are fossils that are millions of years old, that existed with the dinosaurs. And in the dinosaurs' teachings, being very old.
In the dinosaurs' teachings, they're very old? Did we uncover some really ancient scrolls recently that I didn't hear about?
Mosquitoes and amber and fossil records completely unchanged for their modern counterparts.
That's not actually true. For most so-called living fossils, there are distinct anatomical differences between the fossil and the living organism. But of course, evolution doesn't state that there's a certain number of years that a species or genus can live and then it has to die. It's not like a species lives for 10 million years and then immediately every member of it drops dead. So even if you were to find a fossil with basically no anatomical differences from the modern form, it would fit perfectly with the theory of evolution.
So tell me another fib. You're going to tell me evolution missed the mosquito entirely?
I'm not even going to look up the mosquitoes to see if there's anatomical differences. There probably are. I'm guessing you probably just took this from Atlas of Creation or something. But yeah, if there are ancient mosquitoes that are anatomically pretty much identical to modern ones, that's more or less what I'm going to tell you. Although the correct way to state it wouldn't be to say that evolution missed them, it would just be to say that there are modern specimens that look the same as the ancient ones. Natural selection, the driving force behind evolution, was still in effect to keep the mosquito looking the same as it did. And you could even have species that branched off from the ancient one and now look different, that live alongside mosquitoes that still look like the ancient ones. That's evolution, man. Sometimes things change and sometimes they just stay the same.
Poor unfortunate damn mosquito then, eh?
Why? A species that lives for like 70 million years? I'd say it's a damn fortunate mosquito.
What about the great white shark? The same thing. Old fossils found.
Well, again, there are anatomical differences, but yeah, damn fortunate shark.
We're finding even remnants of creatures in this world that we thought to be extinct, with certain tsunamis and such.
Wait, is that it? Tsunamis aren't creatures.
Certain tsunamis and earthquakes underneath the water resurfaced many creatures recently. Creatures that we thought were extinct.
Ah, okay, well that makes more sense. So we didn't have a complete list of species on Earth. Suck it, evolution.
But yet, there they were, defying our millions of years cataloging of the phylums.
Why do you keep talking about phylums? Is that your word of the day? And fuck! You got me saying it too now. The plural is phyla.
The scientists have become sloppy. They've become arrogant. They have become quite foolish, seeking that Nobel Peace Prize and that place in academic history.
Yeah, just look at all these distinguished scientists who won the Nobel Peace Prize. Mother Teresa, the Dalai Lama, the UN, Barack Obama, the greatest scientific minds of the modern age. To hell with physics and chemistry, I want the Peace Prize. That's what'll secure me a place in academic history.
And it's not only intellectually dishonest, but morally dishonest. The crap that they push on people nowadays and call it truth.
Can you explain what morally dishonest means? I mean, if I'm to take it literally, morally dishonest means that their dishonesty is moral. Kinda doubt that's what you meant, so what did you mean? Did you mean that they're dishonest about what their morals are? Or maybe moral dishonesty is just like intellectual dishonesty, so it's to use biased, dishonest reasoning to come to a moral conclusion? But that's still just intellectual dishonesty. I've never heard anybody say morally dishonest before. It doesn't make any sense, so you have to explain it.
You can't just hold up something similar and say it came from something else without some actual lab work, people. Without some actual genome sequencing and DNA structure analysis.
So genetic comparison works because we don't have the DNA, and anatomical comparison fails because we do have the anatomy. It seems to me like that's what your criteria are. The things that are impossible are the things that you insist must be done, and the things that are possible are the things that you insist don't work. But like I said, we don't need the DNA of the ancestors, we can compare the DNA of living creatures and find common ancestry that way. But you've defined evidence for evolution as only being possible when it comes from species that are extinct, and so you arbitrarily, automatically reject all the DNA evidence. It'll be hilarious if you ever have to undergo a paternity test. No, that's not going to prove anything. It'll only work once the human species is extinct.
I'm sorry, I'm not buying your evolutionary theory. It seems like a deluded crackpot's fool's delusional dream at best.
And Ra knows I've got too many of those already. I'm not buying another.
Mankind has been on this planet in the last 6,000 years, has not changed much, according to the simplest of cave paintings and such.
Aside from what I would hope would be the obvious fact that you wouldn't expect evolution to produce major anatomical change in 6,000 years in humans, are you really trying to use, in your own words, the simplest of cave paintings to compare our anatomy now with that of 6,000 years ago? The simplest of cave paintings shows we had a head, a torso, 2 arms, 2 legs. Doesn't exactly make it real easy to do detailed anatomical comparison.
Some things just don't change people. And if anything, you've de-evolved in your capacity for learning, or reading comprehension, or knowledge in general being retained. You're not evolving in the slightest. You're becoming more and more basic.
You make a compelling case. By which I mean specifically you make a compelling case.
It is like my own personal hell on earth that I have to argue with imbeciles on a regular basis about every raw, forsaken thought on this planet.
You have to argue with people about every thought you have?
The TV is spitting snakes at me. No, really. Fine, don't believe me, you ignorant fool.
You know, that'll stop if you quit dropping acid every day.
I mean, personally, I laugh at people when they talk about walking on waters. We're not even thinking more deeply about walking on spiritual waters. I laugh them to scorn. I laugh them to scorn about the miracles that are plainly written in books that are vastly misunderstood because they have no context for language.
Hey, you know, I'll remember that if I ever need linguistic advice. You seem like just the guy.
Generally speaking, Christians don't understand their own book because they don't read, and they don't study.
Finally, something we agree on. We might just have a hope of finishing this video on a note of agreement. That'd sure be nice.
Jews don't understand their own book because they are either unscrupulous pigs, hell-bent on world domination, the demonic cult of serpent worship, or they do the same.
Fuck you! There goes my fucking utopian vision of finishing this video on a happy note.
I know many of you are not capable of thinking about biology or its nature there and now, but if you wish to speak about something, you should at least be educated concerning it.
I don't need to comment.
If I talk about a protein shell, or its capability for repelling viruses based upon its shape, and the virus's shape being repelled by it, or a chemical matrix being repulsion properties of it, and you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up.
I would completely flip my lid at the hypocrisy on display here, contemptuously telling people that if they don't understand what you're talking about, they should look it up, when you yourself clearly neither understand what you're talking about nor have looked it up. But last time I did that, I had a heart attack. I'm not sure what a heart attack would do now that I'm dead, but I don't want to risk it. So I'm just gonna go to my happy place. Go to my happy place.
Don't say stupid, ignorant things on my channel.
That's my job.
I don't like stupid, ignorant people, nor do I like liars.
Typical batshit crazy religious self-loathing.
If you expect to barge into my channel with such imbecilic behavior, you're gravely mistaken. Of course I'm going to censor you. I want no part of fools or liars.
Yeah, he's a censor too. Isn't this guy just an all-around great fella?
If you do not like my viewpoint, to hell with you. I don't care about your viewpoint. I strive for perfection and flawlessness, truth-keeping.
I strive for perfection, flawlessness, and truth-keeping. But I never, ever listen to anyone else's opinion, ever, which means that I just made it up as I went along, with no reality check at all.
If you don't like that, then we will never have anything in common. We don't have a nature to spend time together conversing in comments. And I think myself better off for that.
If you don't share exactly my viewpoint, I have no interest in ever speaking with you, which is why I've spent the last 2 years alone in this room making 200 progressively more insane videos on YouTube. I'm so lonely.
Farewell.
They did the mash!
They did the Monster Mash!
The Monster Mash!
It was a graveyard smash!
They did the mash!
It caught on in a flash!
They did the mash!
They did the Monster Mash!